DC's increasingly vibrant tech scene is an exquisite counterpoint to the government bureaucracy that has defined this town. Washington is being reinvented. Two leading entrepreneurs are here today to share their story about the challenges and the opportunities that DC presents as a startup ecosystem. Founder and CEO of WeddingWire, Timothy Chi, will share his story of building the largest resource for wedding planning. With him is Fundrise founder and president Dan Miller. Fundrise uses a new model of finance to make it possible for anyone and everyone to invest in real estate. Steve Clemens is back to lead the conversation.
Hey, everybody. Oh, man, don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Where are you going? Where are you going? Come on. No, come on in, guys. Come on in, Tim, Dan. Tim, join us. How many of you are going to be getting married in the next year or so? Any willing to admit it? This is not a marrying crowd. This gentleman right here. I hate weddings. I really hate weddings. I was just talking to Tim a minute ago saying that, one way in terms of WeddingWire having a sort of a 2.0 line of business is to sort of give me an opportunity to attend a wedding without really being there.
A virtual wedding.
Yeah, virtual wedding participation. But both thank you, Dan, for being here. Fundrise, I was just reading about what they called the big ass round that you raised $31 million or something. But so the big ass round, I'm just quoting that. I'm not, trying to get
the technical term.
Yeah, the technical term, but it was congratulations. I'm just sort of interested as we start a discussion. Tim, you created, you went through a wedding. I guess you went through a lot of stress with that.
Yep.
You remained married.
Yes.
But
that's been the toughest part.
Yeah. So there are two for both of you. I sort of take it both two ways. One, I get like very quick snapshots of what your firms do, and they're both so interesting yet very different. And then talk about the DC climate for startups. Is it good? Is it crappy? Could it be better? Tim?
So our quick story, the best way to think about our business is if you're all familiar with a company like Yelp or TripAdvisor where you would go and read reviews to figure out where you want to dine or vacation. When I was going through the planning process, I realized that there wasn't the equivalent or analog to that for helping to find merchants to plan your wedding. And what didn't make sense to me about it was this is like a big deal, right? You're spending a lot of money and you also can't redo it. It's high risk, high emotion, and all these different things. And so there was no marketplace that existed to really help consumers, brides and grooms, make better purchase decisions about the most important day of their life. So that's what we do today. Is our business model is very, very similar to like a Yelp or a TripAdvisor. We have 350 employees based up in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and the company is about 8 years old. In terms of DC, this is actually my second startup, so to speak, in Washington D.C. The first one I was part of was a company called Blackboard, an education company as well, and
which is just down the street.
Which is just down the street. Yeah. It was even closer before. We were at 19th and L, and so the DC community has, from a startup perspective, I think non-objectively has been very, very good for me as an entrepreneur.
Could it have been better?
It's hard to say for me. I certainly for the Blackboard experience, it was a roller coaster ride. We were .com boom followed by .com bust, and luckily for the education space, we were more of an enterprise SaaS business rather than a true .com. So we weathered the storm there and had a good outcome there. For me, in the second time around with WeddingWire, it's been very good. Mostly because I grew a lot of roots in the area and the venture community, the entrepreneur community. Everything's been. It's a very tight-knit community, I find, and so once you spend a little bit of time in the space, it's very easy to move around.
What was your biggest challenge in launching and getting scale in WeddingWire?
It was and continues to be just hiring great talent in the area.
Is that coding talent?
Coding talent, absolutely. I wish they would.
Or is it wedding? I sort of, was telling someone, our owner, David Bradley, owns a house that was in the Wedding Crashers, but I sort of, I have a kind of warped sense of weddings and, competitive wedding planners and how do you actually deal with the reputational types of stuff of what one wedding planner wants to completely ruin another wedding planner?
So first on that point, as you guys would imagine, online reputation of small businesses can make or break you nowadays.
Right.
I mean, going across all verticals, right? So it's a really important thing, and businesses that are involved in online reputation need to take it very seriously. The answer to your question is we built a lot of technology to help do fraud detection. So we try and track where reviews are generated from, and we do sentiment analysis, and then we have a team that actually will go and try and ensure that the integrity of the review system is.
Now, Dan, you're going to get married next June, right?
Next June?
Yeah,
I'll check it out. I'll be out there later today.
Right, so you and your fiance are going to get that. But you're in a completely different space. You're in the real estate space, and then you did something weird. Because one of the things that in the investment world, when you sort of look at the major titans of global finance and real estate development and how much money they stack up for themselves, you know, the typical folks out there just don't see any pathway or on-ramp into that. So why did you get so generous?
Sure. So our background...
When you come from a pretty wealthy...
We came from a real estate development background.
Development
so we were on the inside and decided to open it up. Fundrise lets anybody invest in commercial real estate for as little as $100 in a single building. So it was the first crowdfunding platform for real estate in the whole United States. It began, our background, our father was a large developer in D.C. He built Gallery Place, Washington Harbor, Market Square. So we grew up around urban development. My brother and I had spun off to start doing our own deals in 8th Street Northeast and Shaw and Bloomingdale, kind of where we saw the growth was. And we had taken a few of those deals to traditional institutional investors, and they just weren't connected to those neighborhoods. They'd never been there. They were too small deals for those types of investors. So we thought, well, why don't we go out to people locally? They know the deals, they know the neighborhood. Why don't we go out to them to raise capital? And so in terms of how DC helped us, it was really 2 years of very intense regulatory filings to make that possible. We found a rule called Regulation A, worked with the SEC, private counsel, and after 18 months launched successfully, where anybody in DC, Maryland, and Virginia could invest in a single building as little as $100. The first project was in 8th Street Northeast. Since then, we stopped doing our own development, are now scaling Fundrise as a platform for other real estate companies from around the country to come online, build a profile, build a brand, and raise capital through the site. And so even though it started with just the small investors, there's now family offices and some institutional investors coming on board. And what it really offers is people the opportunity to invest in real estate, impact their surroundings, and also make money at the same time historically.
So you grew up in a real estate household. I grew up, my dad was a spy. So I absorbed those things. So if I were a money launderer and wanted to take illicit money and pump it into that, what would stop that from?
It would be easier to do it offline.
Easier to do it offline?
So we have OFAC checks on people investing in terms of checking where the capital's coming from. And then we underwrite all the deals. We fund on balance sheet at closing. So it's not just a platform where anybody can post anything like a Craigslist. It's more like kind of an investment banking model, very heavily underwritten, and we'll stand behind the deals that are up there to give people confidence to invest.
How do you service a $100 investor? I've always been intrigued that, you know, if you go to, we had Rob Hilton at Bank of America, but the truth of the matter is that in many banks, until recently, low deposit savers actually are very unprofitable for institutions. You know, when you're in fundraising, I was always interested in, you know, when you get those dreaded $3 requests from Nancy Pelosi for the DCCC or the Republicans, that just give us $3. That used to cost more money than the ask. So how do you actually solve the problem of the low-level investor?
So that's really why most large investment groups go to big deal sizes and go to big checks, because it's a similar amount of work for larger deals and to raise $1 million versus 10,000. And so what the new regulations and technology allow is the incremental investor on our site costs nearly nothing. They go to the site, they buy, it's all digital, everything's electronic, the tax documents, the distribution.
So you're delivering 12 or 14, so if I go put $100 into it, I'll get 12 bucks?
Yeah, you'll get 12 bucks back.
Really?
But the $100 investor still is not profitable for us, but it's the vision, it's the brand. The $500,000 investor always will be a more profitable customer, but it's about giving everyone the opportunity. And our average investment size is about $5,000, so it's more about access than that being our core customer.
Great. And so what was you know, again, to come back to the DC climate here, and you know the real estate area here, but have there been, you know, when you look at New York, you look at Silicon Valley, which are such hotbeds of talent, but also they're, you know, where the big pipes of money are going. Is you know, what could DC do better? What are the structural elements that either helped you or hindered you in building your startup?
I mean, I grew up in DC, so from where I grew up to now, it's an enormous improvement. It still has a long ways to go, but there's been huge growth. I think one of the benefits we found is actually through engineers, because Northern Virginia has a lot of kind of defense contracting related engineers. Many of them now want to work at startups, and so there actually is comparatively a very good pool of engineers versus the amount of companies competing for them. But I think the other broader talent outside of engineering, in people who have experience marketing, people who have experience in other aspects of tech, is still pretty thin in DC as compared to New York. So we have an office in New York where we do a lot of our kind of capital raising and investment and funding side, because that's where that stuff's based.
Are you guys both profitable now?
We are not profitable.
You're not profitable, but your growth is in such
We are
a,
growing and we've raised a lot of money, but we are not profitable.
So is your goal to build a company that stands on its own, or is your goal to get bought by Google?
No, we really started this because we had a passion, and a lot of times why it took us a while to find the right venture investors, they told us to shelve the small dollar investor and just focus on high net worth. And so for us, we want to get this to a point where everybody has the opportunity to invest in real estate, have it be global. We'll be in London by next year, that you can invest in an asset in London, you can invest across border, and really make kind of private real estate transactions a real market where you can actually comparatively see deals and invest in them. And our thought is, people right now, they can invest in stocks, they can invest in bond funds, not even an individual bond, really. And so you're giving people the opportunity to invest in commercial real estate directly, not through REITs. And over time, I think people are going to start allocating more money that direction, and it'll kind of have a huge impact, but it's a long tail. It's going to take a while.
So Tim, you're already profitable. What piece of advice would you give Dan on becoming profitable?
I think it's the journey is more important than the end point at this stage, right? So, but I actually did want to say, one of the things that I noticed on your point around young talent coming in, one of the things that I noticed is, I think this area has great talent. I think I was looking at our numbers in the last 2 years. About 40% of our staff is probably 1 to 3 years out of school. So we were on pace for hiring. We're adding like 10 people a month right now.
Does that mean they're talented or cheap?
Maybe both. No, it's actually talent. It's very talent, right? We're just kind of hire best fit. But one thing that I noticed is the folks coming out of schools now are very mission purpose driven in terms of what they're looking for. So it's not as interesting necessarily to go back to sort of the stock jobs that maybe we'll attend. Connecting with doing something big, different is a real big part of how they make their job choices, and being able to explain how you're changing an industry or the world or impacting the world is a big
It's a
part of
generational
recruiting.
shift.
It
And we've
totally
even
is.
found our investor base, there's a financial return, but they get excited about being able to own that specific building or be in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So there's an emotional resonance on both sides that connect people to these platforms.
Is there an opportunity to do WeddingWire?
We've heard of WeddingWire, funeral. I mean,
No.
we own all the URLs.
Yeah.
We'll say that.
I mean, it's not
yes.
an entirely facetious question.
No,
right?
no. And you know what?
Somebody
We
here's
can
going to run with
create
that
new
idea.
customers too for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, where we spend a lot of time thinking about is weddings are obviously a very important life stage event for everyone. There are others as well where the same characteristics are exhibited, where it's very high emotion. It's one time in your life. There's a deadline that's set. Let's talk about bar and bat mitzvahs. Let's talk about your 40th birthday party. It only happens once, and you only get one shot to pull
reunions.
it off. College
Yeah,
reunions.
yeah.
The list goes on and on. So anything that demonstrates those behaviors, we're interested in.
Is same-sex weddings a big boom area for you?
It's
Have they found you?
It's been an area we've been extremely supportive of. As a matter of fact, I just saw something on Twitter today that Florida just today staged it's
And are you finding them gravitating to using WeddingWire?
We have a great partnership with a site called and an owner called GayWeddings.com.
Oh, wow.
And Catherine Ham, who's really been an industry figure for same-sex marriage, lives here in D.C. One of the great things about being in D.C., and we have a very close
You're
relationship.
helping incrementally get me closer to experimenting
Oh, yeah?
with weddings again, or at
I'll
least
put
going
you-
and attending. Let me open up the floor to people who'd like that question. Yes, right here. And we're going to run a microphone over to you.
Once you've developed your site, how do you get recognized in the sea of all the other sites? Do you
Great
just count
question.
on word of mouth, or are there certain strategies that have proved exceptionally effective?
Right.
Do you want to start?
Yeah,
Yes,
Fundrise.
for us, it really was press to start because we
New
were
York
the first.
Times?
New York Times. We were the first company in the country to do it. So there was really, actually, Atlantic City's Emily Badger wrote the first long piece.
I will
kind
pass that on.
Yeah, it was a wonderful
Yeah,
article.
yeah.
And so we found that press has been the biggest driver, and particularly because the deals are also related to a certain area. And then we found that kind of panels and speaking can be helpful broadly to position your company, but in terms of getting traffic and stuff, it's not as good. But so we found press, and then just being local and being in the middle of events and being here in DC in particular, there's a pretty good network of people.
Tim?
We took a little bit of a different tact. Our business grew city by city. So we were, I think what marketers would call very direct response oriented. So we were bidding online on Google AdWords and being very customer acquisition focused when it comes to the dollars that we have to spend. Now we're at a point now where we're investing more in brand marketing and brand response now that we have a national platform.
Who's your competition?
We say we compete with anyone that looks at the marketing budget for small businesses that service our space. So we can go anywhere from, people pay, venues, photographers, DJs, they pay us because we help what we say door swings and phone rings, right? Our job is to drive customers to their site, to their business. So it can go anywhere from the Googles to the Yelps of the world to endemic in-market competitors that are also trying to buy.
Interesting. Other questions? Did you have your hand up? You were just, you were worried about the way. Yes, right here.
Thank you. Mike Catalano with Veteran Crowd. We're in the equity crowdfunding space for veteran entrepreneurs.
What's it called?
Veteran Crowd.
Veteran Crowd, okay.
Question is to Fundrise. Since you are kind of the vanguard and leading the on-ramp for equity crowdfunding, what are some of the common misconceptions for typical investors in equity crowdfunding, especially around disclosure and certified financials?
There's a lot of complexity, just kind of a few things to jump into. Most people don't historically invest very much in commercial real estate, if at all, so there's really the educational burden is the first. And then second, there's just a lot of, we have to build a lot of credibility of like, we're actually underwriting these transactions, we have our money in these deals too. And so I think more than anything, it's how do you build a brand? It's like e-commerce in the early 90s. There were lots of different companies, and then there were a few that really consolidated the market. How do you gain the consumer trust when it's the first time they've done something, first time they've ordered something online, or first time they've bought an investment in real estate online? And so we've just found lots of transparency, lots of information, and then very responsive on customer service to be the best way to go.
Tim, you've helped create 2 companies. I'm always interested in entrepreneurs. Are they sort of one-note Johnnies, or do they have multiple things? When I look at Dan, he's young, he's got a long life. Is this going to be his big deal? You're finally going to get profitable, and this is all you're going to do the rest of your life, or do you jump into something else? And what that drive to? You created this.
Driven 100%. And so
it's
for
all
me,
about you.
It is all about me. And but more so, it's what you can connect with,
right?
And really understand very deeply. So that's for me. I'm sure there's many other cases.
Dan?
Yeah, I think similarly, we were solving our own issues. We had our own real estate company and wanted to allow people to invest with us in these deals. For me, I like the stage where it's 5, 10, 20 employees, more than 100. There's kind of a creative prototyping phase that I think most entrepreneurs find really exciting, and then they want someone to scale it generally. So I think, I don't know what I'd like. I'd like to open a hotel at some point. I'd like to do something in agriculture. But there's just kind of an obsession.
So you have a line of other stuff.
I have a lot of other things I'd like to do at some point. But there's kind of an obsession you find with entrepreneurs where there's a problem they're trying to solve. They're incredibly passionate about it, and they're driven, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. So I've found more than anything, it's that kind of, are you there because it fits who you are as a person and what you want to be doing? And those are the entrepreneurs I've found to be most successful because they spend their Sunday working on it because they love it, not because they're forced to. And it's something that just consumes them, and they become representative of that concept and that business.
I asked, just to kind of wrap this up, I did this bus tour this summer with Steve Case. It was called Rise of the Rest. Do you know this? Yeah. We got a big blue bus and traveled around. We went on startup crawls. And, Steve Case was sort of known as being an emotionless guy at his company or whatever. And I asked him, what were you like as a child? How did your parents deal with you? And these were kind of sideways questions he hadn't asked before. So I'm interested in what were you like as a child? And did your parents support you? Would they hinder you?
I think I really looked up to my father. I think I was always passionate about
But
urban
did you think this was a
development.
nutty course for you, or?
Well, he did nutty stuff at his day. So, when he did most of his projects, they the first condos in downtown D.C. and they're 81. That was crazy. Now there's a couple $1,000 a foot. So I think for us it was something we're really excited about. We've been in it for 4 years. It took us 2 years just to get the first deal done with the regulations, but we wanted to get to the end results. I think from my father, more than anything, I learned if you want to get somewhere that's difficult, you really have to have a vision of what you want to achieve, and you're going to run through lots of roadblocks on the way there.
Tim?
My childhood, my parents were shockingly supportive. They were immigrated here in the 70s, so if I was groomed to, the only acceptable outcome was doctor, lawyer, engineer in my household growing up. And so when I made the call graduating from college and said we wanted to try the startup thing with my drinking buddies from college, you can imagine I was a little fearful of what the reaction was.
And then they
come back.
supported you.
And they said, now's a great time in your life.
See,
Go try it."
these feel-good stories don't work. I mean, Steve Case's parents were much more negative, and so I had hoped for tension.
You hoped
in the family. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Timothy Chi with WeddingWire, Dan Miller with Fundrise. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.